Hi, my name is Jenna Oswald and I'm in English 250 with Michael Turner, and today I'm summarizing kind of what we've learned so far in a few ways that I can understand it. I always thought that I knew the kind of general idea behind what language was, and it being an exchange of words between people, and it had something to do with culture, but it wasn't something I ever really spent time thinking about. And I, um, I never really had thought about where language came from. I knew it was something that had almost always existed, and something we were required to learn about every year in school, but um, it wasn't until I read the piece we were assigned on Eurocentrism. I'm not sure if that's how you say it correctly, but that I really found a definition that I could really understand. And this is what the definition was. It helped me visualize what language really is. It says, language is a vehicle for the expression of thoughts that are already there independently of the words and grammatical structures that express them. That was on page 11 in the piece on Eurocentrism. And after reading that and connecting it to the Hackett reading of human and animal ways of communication and language, and how they are alike and what they share and how they're different, everything we'd talked about in class kind of fell into place and became something I could visualize and see and understand. And so one thing that really stuck with me, one of the 7 properties of human language that Hackett talks about, is duality of patterning and the double articulation. They kind of go hand in hand. And at first, when we talked about it, I was thinking of the example used in the reading of lights, or it was like Paul Revere or some kind of lights signaling, and I didn't get that. But after we kind of talked about it in class a little bit, I was finally able to understand that we used an example of the words sit and soot and suit or something, and seeing that and how one vowel can change and that will change the meaning of the word, but the way you say something or the sounds doesn't change what the word means. And a way I can remember that is growing up, my mom, she has been a bird watcher for my entire life, and she's one of the crazy ladies. She reads books on it, and she has a pair of insane binoculars, and she has all the bird calls memorized. And she watches the birds in our backyard, because we have kind of a foresty backyard where birds like to come, and we've always had a birdhouse and tons of bird feeders. And I was thinking about that, and how she told me when I was younger about how birds have different calls for when they're alerting, when they're hungry, when they're trying to mate, and when they're trying to find their family. And we touched on that a little bit in class, how birds don't have to worry about syntax or forming sentences. They just make their calls, and they know what it means, and it's something that's innate and biological in them when they are born. And it made me think kind of about the way that language is born into people, and how, what is truly natural, and how the pitches that we use and the sounds and frequencies don't matter as much to us. Maybe to get a point across, but not to tell the meaning of what we're saying. We can figure that out without having that part. And the kind of words and phrases and things we teach children to instigate word structure and sentence structure and things like that, how much of that just comes naturally versus what they come out knowing or learn in their schooling. And we have a tendency to say things how they sound as humans, and I know I'm extremely guilty of this. So, I mean, obviously we do that, but I say, like, if I'm saying something quickly or if I'm comfortable with someone and I'm not worried about how I'm speaking, I will say my T's like they're D's, like, and I know that's more about syntax, like where it's placed, but saying I hit a ball or water instead of water and I hit a ball. And that is something that I've noticed, but I almost didn't care to really think about it. And just seeing how that's something that so many people do without realizing it. And it's so common. It just blew my mind, like thinking about that and how, but if we're saying like toys or train, I guess that's different too with the ch sound, but you can hear the T but not otherwise, even though they're the same letter and it's supposed to be the same sound. The T doesn't have meaning, but its placement can change the sound, but it still means the same thing, you know? And so I think getting that across to me, trying to make me understand phonology of just the correlation between that as opposed to morphology, which is giving meaning to like two words. Like morphemes aren't words, but they're two things put together to create one word, and they're like sounds, and so it does mean something, and when you say word you mean one word, but word and s, words, two morphemes together is two words or more than one word, and so the meaning does matter in morphology, and I think meaning and morphology and phonology doesn't really have meaning, I guess, and so trying to remember that, just keeping that instinct there. And although, I mean, these are things that I do every day, it's not stuff that I think about or that I've ever been challenged to think about. And I think, although animals have their own way and own method of communication through sounds that can intertwine with human language, but don't necessarily have the same rules or abide by the same rules. They can't be classified that way. They still have their own methods, and I wish that I could go back to the way things were when I was a baby and I could scream in different ways, and my parents would know what I wanted, if I was hungry or if I was tired or if I was sad or if I needed my diaper changed. And so that instinct that comes with parenting of knowing what cry means what, even though I'm not saying any words. It's where the animal methods of communication and the human come together, and there's a lot more instances of that than we think, and I think that's pretty cool. And I think the older we get, the more our language evolves and the more we learn about ourselves and our past and how that will come through the way we communicate. And so that's what I've learned so far, and that's what I've taken away from our readings. So thank you.